Hello, everyone. I wanted to jump on here to give you a little update on things that have been going on with me, as well as our progress on season 2 of the podcast, in addition to giving you a little channeled message about what has been going on in the last several weeks in terms of the energies and your ascension path. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for all of you who have reached out and asked me how I was doing, because you hadn't seen any new episodes coming out or that there was no new update. And I had several of you ask me if everything was okay. And yes, everything is fine. We are well into the recordings for the new season, for season 2. And we do look like we are on track for the release for the first episode of season 2 at the end of July. So you can sort of mark that in your calendar for the end of July, and I will keep you posted on when that date will be for the first episode of season 2. In the meantime, I'm going to give you possibly a couple more channeled messages in between that time. What I have been doing is I've been really listening to my intuition and to my guides about what content I'm putting out and what I'm doing in terms of my day to day. And it was really interesting because Julia and I were discussing our schedule just after the end of season 1. And basically we had come to the determination that it would be about 3 months before we could put out season 2. And that was just so we could really work on at least the first several episodes and get ahead of the game, so to speak, in terms of editing, but then also to give ourselves a little bit of a break. That kind of put me in a little bit of a panic because I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't done that before. Like I haven't taken 3 months off and not put out any content before. And so I instantly went into this space of, oh, well, maybe I can start taking some of the information that we haven't used or, repurpose it in some way to make some Instagram reels, things like that. So I just started brainstorming. And as I was doing so, my computer literally shut down by itself. And Julia and I were sitting by my computer. And so we both started laughing because we both intuitively got the hit at that moment that, nope, that's not what you're going to be doing. I checked in with my guides and I was like, okay, so what if I, post some content like every couple of weeks or, and they're like, nope, you're not doing that either. And I'm like, okay. So to my surprise, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to be doing any content. And as things unfolded for me over the last several weeks, I understood why. I started going through another sort of upgrade, if you will. And this one was pretty rough. It was a pretty rough one. It was a lot of purging, a lot of grief, a lot of pain. It felt very much like one of the first dark nights of the soul I ever had on this journey. The biggest difference was I had so many more tools now. I had so many more tools to just accept where I was and to embrace where I was, knowing that coming out of the other side of whatever this purge was, this sort of shadow side was, that I would be in a period of leveling up. Okay. And so a lot of this, the theme for me was about letting go. This has been a theme for me for pretty much my whole life, but it's something that was really prevalent in these last several weeks. You may have heard on previous episodes about me getting very antsy to move to the seaside or to the ocean and to leave Paris. And as things have sort of progressed, that desire has gotten greater and greater and greater to the point where, for me, being here in Paris has gotten incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable. I don't enjoy myself anymore when I'm here. It's become untenable. Or I should say it had been untenable. I've now reached a place where I've had a feeling of acceptance of where I am and really being able to accept where I am, knowing that I am still going to be relocating, that I am still going to be moving forward, but not really getting angry at the timing or angry at the timing not unfolding the way that I want it to. So part of my journey over the last few weeks has been to really just let go and really appreciate where I am. And I know this sounds very simple. It's connecting to your higher self and your guides and spirituality 101. But sometimes our human self can really rail against that idea that you must just surrender to what is. Many of you know that I went on a little road trip to do some exploration of possible locations of where I could live and that sort of thing. And yes, I found specifically one place that looks like it's a very good option. And I just felt like it wasn't quite right and I couldn't figure out why. But the thing is that I don't need to figure out why, because if it is the right place, it'll happen and it'll unfold the way that it needs to happen and it'll unfold in the right timing. So when I came back to Paris from my month-long road trip, it was still raining. It was still winter. It was still cold. And quite frankly, still really has been. Summer hasn't really started yet. It's been frustrating, to say the least. I've had to really go within and say, okay, how can I use this time? How can I use this time to be able to acknowledge the fact that, okay, the external forces, the external circumstances of my life right now are not what I would like them to be. What are the external circumstances that are absolutely what I want it to be? Well, I have time. I have time to be able to go within, to be able to work through whatever I need to work through. I have a fabulous apartment that I love. I have beautiful, wonderful, supportive friends here. So I started focusing on those things. And even though it wasn't something that made me feel better, so to speak, that wasn't the goal. My goal was not to feel better, because that was not the purpose of what I was going through. The purpose of what I was going through was to really take a look at why this is showing up in my experience and why I'm feeling the way that I am. Some of this was active work that I was doing. Some of it was just work that was being done while I was just kind of relaxing and vegging out, so to speak. There was a lot of deep pain, deep crying, a lot of purging. And some of it, I really had no idea why I was feeling the way that I was. It was just sort of there. I'm going through some health issues and no worries. It's nothing super serious, but I am going through some health issues. And so there are some things that come along with that when we are going through our spiritual journey. Learning how to work with my body and speak to my cells and really work with what is happening in my body and understanding that it is happening for a reason. There are so many things that have been happening over the last few weeks that really kind of culminated into the breakthrough that I had just only a couple of days ago when I came out of this state. And so now I really, in hindsight, understand why the guides were like, absolutely do not post anything during that time, because I needed that time. I needed that time to be with myself and go within, be with friends, do the things that I need to do in order to help myself get to a place where then I can now show up for you again and be able to help all of you with what you need. Okay. And this is a message for all of you out there as well, that you need to take care of yourself first. You do. You are the most important thing in this experience. You need to really take that time if you need it. So now that I'm sort of on the other side of this, it's really miraculous how things like this happen, because I was in such resistance of what was. I was in such resistance of not being able to move forward with the plans that I want to make. And the fact that the universe is like, no, it's not time yet. No, it's not time yet. I'm like, oh gosh. And that has been, a theme throughout my life, is that it's just not time yet. You have to be patient. You have to be more patient, and it brings out the little 5-year-old in me. It brings out the little temper tantrum in me saying like, no, I don't want to wait. And that's that ego voice that really kind of sets in, because I know definitively that moving to a new place, relocating to a new place, does not necessarily mean that I'm going to be infinitely happier in that place. Now, am I going to be more energetically aligned with the new place? Absolutely. Is it going to be more supportive for the next phase of my life? Absolutely. Is there going to be more sun? Definitely. But it's not to say that I can't use the time that I have here in a way that is going to be supportive as well. So one of the things that really sort of felt like it was coming off of my energy field and releasing entirely was that feeling of needing to know. That feeling of needing to know how things were going to work out, what's going to unfold, how it's going to happen. I did this in a couple of different ways. So you're doing this work energetically first. First and foremost, you're doing it energetically. And then it is about satiating the ego, if you will, or keeping the ego satisfied so it doesn't rear its head and say, hey, I need to know now. Okay. So basically what I did is I worked with my higher self and my ego, and I basically said, okay, we know that this is the trajectory that we're going. And I'm writing down in my manifestation journal exactly what I want, with the openness to allow the universe to bring me what it is that I truly want. And so in my manifestation journal, I wrote down, that I'm moving to a place where I can live on the beach or very, very near the beach, like steps near the beach. I did not specify a place. I specified that I want to live in a place with a lot of huge windows, because that's something that I really desire. And I'm not being specific about whether it's a house or apartment. It could be anything. It can be whatever the universe sort of presents to me as an option. And then one of the other things that I wrote down was that it needs to be a place where I can have spiritual community, because that is incredibly important to me. There were a whole other list of things that I wrote, but you understand when you write down these manifestations, you have to make it specific but open, right? And as I was writing these things down, my ego is saying, well, is it going to be here? Is it going to be there? Are we going to have to prepare for something else? Like, what are we going to have to do? Like, and my mind is going in every which direction. I'm like, okay, yes, I'm staying in France. No, I'm not staying in France. I'm going somewhere else. I'm going into another country. Oh, maybe I'll just move to Bali. Oh, maybe I'll move back to the United States. No, I don't want to do that. Maybe I'm going to go to Australia. Like, maybe I could move to Australia. Like, this is the chatter of, of the ego, right? And so like there's that back and forth between everything. And so in order to quiet that, I basically said, look, all the options are possible. Everything is possible right now. And I can just allow for the universe to bring me the opportunity that is exactly what is aligned for me at this time. And I know from prior experience that that's exactly what will happen, because it'll fall into my lap. It will arrive in a way that lets me know that this is the right decision, or this is the right thing for my path at this time. Allowing my ego to sort of be satiated, I have decided to say, okay, well, if it doesn't happen by winter, if this move doesn't happen by this coming winter, which I don't want to experience here in Paris, then, maybe I'll just go and travel for 6 months. Maybe I'll go and live in the Caribbean for 6 months. Maybe I'll go somewhere else, like travel in Asia. It allows me to have that freedom to say, okay, well, you can do whatever you want. Since I can work from anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter where I go. Instead of looking at it as something that was challenging, I'm now looking at it as something that is, in fact, exciting. That maybe this next phase of my life doesn't need to start right away, because maybe I'm going to just go and explore for a while. Or maybe not. Maybe I will find the perfect apartment in the place that I want to be, and it shows up tomorrow. But that's the beauty of letting go, is that you are not having any preconceived notions of how it's going to show up and when. And the thing is that this is not something that I didn't know already. But knowing this information, knowing, I have to let go. I have to let go of the expectation of the outcome of all of these things. Knowing it and actually doing it are two vastly, vastly different things. You can't fake energy. Energy doesn't lie. I say this all the time. And the thing is that if you are in a space of holding so tightly to something that you can't see outside of that thing, it's time to set the intention that you're going to let go, because what you're holding on to very, very tightly might not be the best thing for you. It might be something completely different that you've never even considered. I just imagine myself sort of releasing that grip. So imagine your energy being constricted, and that's what it feels like. And that's what it is when you are focusing on just one outcome or one thing, or one place or one person. Release that constriction, expand that energy, make it as wide as you possibly can. And when you first do that, it might be super duper scary. It might be really, really scary to initially do. And that's okay. So maybe you only expand it for a couple of seconds and then you're like, okay, back to the constriction. Okay, great. That's fine. But you practice being open. And what was happening for me in the last couple of weeks was sort of the last vestiges of my ego trying to grasp on to what I wanted as far as how my life was going to unfold for the next several months. And once I let go, and after I had my little temper tantrum and grief and pain and crying and all of that, once I let go, the freedom that comes along with that is just delicious. This is all to say that all of you may have been going through something similar in terms of letting go over the past several weeks, letting go of any number of things. It doesn't even have to be something as big as what I'm dealing with in terms of like an actual move or anything like that, but it could be anything. It could be old belief systems. It could be the old way that you think that you're supposed to be. It could be the way that others view you and judgments of that. It could be any of those things. And I know that many people have been going through a lot of the same energy. And I believe that it had a lot to do with the astrology as well, which was incredibly supportive of us letting go so we could move into the next chapter. And I can promise you that this is not the last time that this will happen. I will certainly go through this again another time. It's part of our growth. It's part of the change. One of the things that really came to me during this time as well is that the greatest lie that is told in our human experience is that people don't change. That is the biggest lie. And the reason why it is because the resistance that we have to change often creates that reality that, oh, well, things are never going to change. People don't change. My situation is never going to change. The only constant we have is change. We're constantly changing. We're constantly moving. But it is a matter of whether or not you're going to decide to let go and allow the change to happen. Or are you going to go kicking and screaming? If you go kicking and screaming, it takes a hell of a lot longer to do. And it's much more painful to go through. This particular period of time that I went through, I just accepted. I accepted that this was uncomfortable. I accepted that this was painful. I accepted that this was something that I needed to go through. So while I was going through it, there was still the higher self part of me that was saying, everything is going to be okay. Everything is going to be fine. Just have to get through this particular piece. You have to move through this particular emotion and do it in a way that is constructive. And that's the other thing, is that in the past, when I went through my first dark night of the soul, it was destructive in so many ways. To my body, to my relationships, to my reality, to everything. This time around, it wasn't damaging to anything. I took the time that I needed. And even if I had outbursts, which I did, I had a couple of outbursts with friends, not toward them, but just sort of like venting and just being really frustrated. I was able to then, thank that friend for holding the space for me to express my frustration and my anger and my irritation and all of those feelings that I had. One of the things I'd like to do right now is to check in with the guides to see if they have any other messages for all of you out there that might be going through something similar, any sort of tools or tips that they have for us as we go through these big transition points. And that's something that I'm talking about. We go through like little transition points, little changes, and those are usually not as hard to get through. But those big points, they are hard. They're hard to get through, and it's hard to see a way out. All right, so we're going to connect to my guide, Maureen, who is a galactic being and the collective that she serves. There is one thing that we do not comprehend about your experience here on the planet, is that when you have resistance, you prolong that resistance much longer than it needs to serve to show you what needs to be worked on. That resistance is showing you where you need to put more love, have more love for self, have more love for others, be in the present moment and accept where you are, who you are, shadow and all. The resistance to accept that just prolongs the process. Sometimes we understand that it is hard to see. This is why we give you tools on a regular basis to help you through these points of shadow. Annette described it beautifully when she was talking about the difference between her first dark night and this one. It is the knowledge and the tools that you acquire that make all the difference in the world. So when you are in that space, go back to the basics. This is something that Annette did in the very beginning of this transition. In the beginning of her spiritual awakening, she would watch a lot of videos or listen to a lot of podcasts, and she went back to the basics and did exactly that at the beginning of this transition. Whoever it is you're drawn to, that is the right teacher, that is the right speaker, that is the right person to uplift you and help you see what needs to be done to move through the energy. It is not about making yourself feel better, as Annette said. It is about getting to the root of why the energy is there. The energy is there to show you something, and once you discover why it's there and you learn what you need to learn from it, it will depart from your energy field. This is something that is unique to your experience here on Earth. The free will that you have allows you to have resistance to what is, to your path, to the unfolding of what is to be. And this resistance creates new realities, new worlds, new trajectories. It's not to say that these are all beneficial trajectories, but they will all teach you nonetheless. Now, you might say, if I'm going with the flow of the energy of my life and I'm completely out of resistance, does that mean I don't have control over my life? And the answer is you always have control over your life. It is whether or not you are going to let your higher self and your soul guide you or your ego. Your higher self knows better than you do. Your higher self knows where to go, what is the best experience for you based on what you came here to do, and you can decide to follow it or not. When you don't follow it, that is when you have more lessons that you need to learn. And it's not to say that when you follow your path that you're not going to have lessons, but those lessons will be less painful. They will not last as long as it does if you're in resistance. For example, with what Annette just went through, she prolonged it about a week longer than it needed to. But in our perspective, that's not a detriment. That is an incredible improvement from where she was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, she would have prolonged this for a year or more. So 10 years ago, this change would have taken years. This time, in this present moment, it has taken her weeks. This is the difference, that having the tools, connecting to your higher self, doing your spiritual practice, this is the difference that it can make. Do not second guess yourself. Understand that you have everything you need. The tools that you receive from others, from podcasts, from myself, from anyone, are simply reminders of what you already have within you. Sometimes we just need to be reminded. So this is your reminder. You can step into your personal power now, and you can decide to move through whatever it is you're going through with grace and allowing yourself the space and the time to move through it. Or you can ignore it and prolong it for years. It is your choice. That is the choice that most humans have, that they don't understand that that is where their power lies, is that it is your choice whether or not to prolong your pain, to prolong your suffering. Are you going to take the time to connect in, go deep within, and figure out what it is your higher self and your guides are trying to tell you? Or are you just going to ignore them? Distract yourself with all of these earthly distractions that you have. It's not to say that distractions do not serve a purpose. They do. Sometimes they serve to pass the time. If you are not capable of being in an empowered energy, the distraction can serve to pull you out of negative energy, if you will, thereby prolonging the situation. But distraction doesn't allow you to actively move into that energy to work through it. We also want you to understand that you do not have to do this alone. Reach out to others to help you. Reach out to others to help you move through this. There are many, many people on this planet that are here to help. There are friends that are in your life for a reason that are here to help. Do not take that for granted. The other aspect we want to address in terms of what has been happening over the last several weeks is the planetary alignments and what has been supportive of this energy. This is a beautiful point of being able to dump all of the energy that doesn't serve you anymore. There are many of these points throughout the course of your trajectories, but this just happens to be one of those points that is very strong energetically. It's time to let go of the things that do not serve you anymore, letting go of the things that you do not wish to experience anymore. Maybe this is something that you have made exceptions for for years, saying it's okay, it'll get better. It's okay, it'll get better. And it continues to not get better. Maybe it's time now to open up your energy, expand your energy, and let go. We understand how difficult this process can be. But if you use these energies as they are, and the energy will stay like this for another several months, be supportive for you to release what you need to release. If you use this energy, it will help accelerate the healing process. When we say that it's supportive energy to allow you to release the things that don't serve you, we really mean that it is helping you to accelerate this process. It will help you be more aware of those things. You will be able to see more clearly during this time. Do not second guess that. These points are here for you, to help you to see the things you may not have seen before. So pay attention, open your eyes, go within, and this period of time will help you rather than hinder you. We understand that as you move forward and you see things moving towards you that you don't want to have happen, we understand that you want to try to avoid it, but we'd like you to not avoid it. We'd like you to walk into it straight on. Have the courage and the bravery to move through it. We thank you for all of the work that you are doing. We thank you for your energy, for your commitment to change, and for your love. Thank you. Thank you so much. So if you are resonating with this message, if you feel that this is really hitting the nail on the head, so to speak, of the things that you've been going through or that you've been feeling over the last several weeks, or you feel it coming on even in the future, you're seeing that little thing coming towards you that you don't necessarily want to look at and you're being forced to. You can certainly tell us your story in the comments in YouTube or in Instagram. I would love to hear from you and how all of you are doing. So as I said, I might be doing a couple more channeled messages over the course of the next month or so until the release of season 2. And I'm sending all of you so much love and compassion, especially those of you if you're going through something like this. I know it's hard, and I know that you can get through it. Until next time, if you would like to book a session with me, of course, I am still open for sessions. Right now, I think I am booked out until beginning of July, but I think I have some openings starting second week in July and forward. So if you feel guided to get a session with me, I can certainly help you with some of these issues, help you understand what you're going through and why. And have a wonderful week. Thanks so much.